Hey everybody, this is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth, and today I've got with me Stacey Lynn Cripps. I'm really excited about having Stacey here. She and I have met a couple of times before, and she is a fantastic, gifted individual. She's devoted her life to helping others discover the spiritual within and to find solace through connection with those no longer on this plane of existence. Um, she is a highly respected evidential medium, a spiritual medium, or evidential medium, I should say. She's a mentor and she's an advisor of the gifts of the spirit. And I'll ask her what that means. 2 years ago, I was fortunate enough to have a personal test reading with Stacy for a program that Stacy was applying for. And it was an incredible experience. I'll tell you that story later on, how it unfolded over the last couple of years. But it really left a mark on me, the reading I had with her. And I can't wait for her to share her insights with everyone. She's been gifted with a divine heavenly connection. She brings comfort and healing to many through heartfelt spiritual communication. She's worked with many grieving families through St. Jude and helping parents heal. And that illuminates the powerful idea that our loved ones are truly never far away from us. And she offers guidance and love through spiritual signs and synchronicities. She's completed a divinely guided meditation album called Guided Meditations to Awaken the Spirit that's now out on Amazon, Apple, and iTunes Music. And we'll talk about that as well. In addition to her spiritual work, she's an organizer and trailblazer, founding Chicago's first grief and healing conference, the Renew Conference, and organizing the Love Force Breakthrough events, where she shared the stage with James Redfield, the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Celestine Prophecy series. She's been in extensive media appearances from local radio shows like WGN's WGN's Radio's Dane Neal, I should say, and the Bill and Wendy Show. She's also connected with some pretty impressive celebrities in the afterlife, such as Prince, Whitney Houston, Elvis Presley, and many more. So with that, I want to welcome Stacey Lynn Cripps.
Oh, thank you, Brian. So honored to be with you and be on your show. Thanks
Yeah,
for
I'm
having
really
me.
interested in having you here. You and I met, as I said, a couple of times or a couple of years ago. I think it was April of
Right.
2021. You didn't know who I was. I had heard about you, but I didn't know a lot about you. And you gave me an incredible reading that I want to talk about as we get into it. But before we get started with that, I always like to ask people, how did you get started on your spiritual journey? How did you discover your gifts?
So evidentially, or I had this gift growing up, and I was not aware of it. When I was born, I wasn't supposed to live but a couple hours, and they always called me special growing up and gifted growing up, but I really didn't understand it. I had an all knowingness or an inner knowingness throughout my life about things, about people. And so I just remember I had adults speaking to me when I was younger and asking me questions and things like that. My parents would have them like meet with me or ask me a question or something, which I am recalling now. And I really never understood it until 1995, my best childhood friend Heather was on her way home from college and she was killed in a car accident. And we had grown up my entire life since we were 4 and 8 years old. And my grief was a trauma state because I had just spoken to her on the phone just probably 2 weeks before. And I just was, in my early 20s and I just experienced trauma. I just went numb. I couldn't really process anything. And I just remember after her funeral, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was crying and I was going to her house in a dream and knocking on the door and she wasn't there. And I asked God to help me. I said, please help me. I can't really go on. It's been, at that time, I believe it had probably been 6 months to a year. And I fell back asleep and she came to me in a dream under an oak tree.
Oh, wow.
And she just began speaking to me and I could feel her essence and her love. I could see her in my dream state. And we sat under this oak tree and we talked for multiple nights. And she gave me evidence of what happened to her in her car accident, that a woman pulled over the car and was holding her before she passed. And so she wasn't alone when she passed. She also had a lot of angels around her when she would come to me in my dream state. So I just would wake up in the morning and I just felt complete love. And when we were young, we used to hang out under this like berry tree for hours and hours in the summertime and just talk. So it's very synchronistic. And she came to me one day walking into a grocery store shortly after the dreams, and my ear was ringing. And I heard her voice, and she said, call my mom tonight and tell her what I've been telling you about the accident. I need you to call her tonight. And I could hear her voice loud and clear. And I got chills everywhere. And I was with my fiance, or husband, who's my husband now. And he said, just call her mom. She's coming to you. Call her mom. And so I called her mom that night, and I told her that Heather's been coming to me, and she's always with angels. She told me that Heather collected angels a year before she passed. She had an angel collection. She also told me that when I shared that a woman pulled over the car and was holding her before she died, she said, I didn't believe them. I said, who? She said, the EMTs on the scene shared with me that a woman was with Heather and holding her before she passed. And I haven't been able to go on with my life knowing that she was alone, which we're never alone. And that was my first spiritual experience in 1995. And then after my loved ones began passing, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my uncle, they would come to me on the day of their passing. And I would feel them in my dream state and see them and speak to them and receive healing from spirit. And it just happened over and over again until 2011. And in 2011, I went to a conference in New York to see a lot of spiritual authors. And I was in an executive coaching program because I'm an executive coach and spiritual coach. And I was hearing about these authors, and I went to see them. And we were taken through a meditation at the start of the conference to Amazing Grace with Dr. Wayne Dyer on the stage. And first time meditating to a guided meditation. And I was opened up to see, feel, and hear spirit in my wakeful state. And I heard everyone, I saw everyone when I was meditating to Amazing Grace. And when I came out of that meditation, I saw in hologram form my grandmother and my grandfather and my uncle up on the stage next to this beautiful vase of flowers. And my grandmother spoke to me, and she said, we're loving you still, and we're guiding you still. And I was crying, like just sobbing like the whole time. And then another speaker came on the stage, and we went through another meditation, and I met my guardian angel who was with me in a car accident. Back in 1997, I was in a car accident, and I was paralyzed from here down for like 8 hours. And a man jumped in my car, and my husband got out of the car, and he was a Filipino man, and he said, you're okay, breathe, just breathe. You need to breathe. He said, wiggle your toes. You are not paralyzed. I'm a doctor. Well, I thought that doctor was real. I thought it was real. And there's a number of accidents that happened on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago when this happened. We were one of them. We were hit from behind. And my husband never saw him. But I thought he pulled over the car and got in the car with me as a doctor and told me I wasn't paralyzed. Well, when I had this angel meditation next, this man came to me and he said, my name is Renee. I am a doctor, and we've met. And when I came out of the meditation, I was just full of chills and tingling. And the speaker said, okay, now ask the person who's sitting right here what their name is. And I turned to her and I said, what's your name? And she said, my name is Renee.
Wow.
So that I had a spiritual awakening. That was September 17th in 2011. I was having them all day long at this conference. It was a Hay House conference. And I just was in a state of bliss and wholeness and oneness for about 2 weeks. I came home from New York, and there was a rainbow over my home when I pulled in the driveway. So the spiritual experiences continued for weeks. I had angels with me. I heard angel hymns on a regular basis when I was awake and when I was sleeping. I was speaking in a way that was not my language when I would answer questions and speak with people. The words thou and shall and things like that were coming out of my mouth. My husband was saying, do you know what you just said? And I said, no, what did I say? He said, I don't know, but you just said thou and shall and for thou. And I just had these angels with me. And I was filled with unconditional love, full of unconditional love. And it was I can't even relive what I experienced because it was so phenomenal. I was just completely opened to see, feel, and hear spirit from that moment forward, not just in my dream state, but now in my wakeful state.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said see, hear, and feel. So you see spirit as well.
Yes. Yes. I saw spirit objectively for a couple years. That means with my eyes open.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to a point where I just asked God to close that because it was too startling for me. I'd be in a workshop and there'd be a man at the table across from me, and I saw his wife, deceased wife, and she was standing right there, and she was looking at me and talking to me, and I would just get startled. But she wanted me to give him a message from him, and so I did at break walk over to him and say, I just want to share with you that this woman, I saw her standing with you. She had on a denim skirt and a white shirt, and she made me feel like she was your wife. And the message is she wants you to get back to your music. And he was, crying and shaking, opened up his wallet, showed me her in the exact same outfit, and said, I'm a country music singer. And my wife passed away a few years ago of, I think, ovarian cancer. And I haven't gotten back to my music since then. And so that was a very powerful message for him. But after that, it was happening so often that I just said, okay, only when I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much. It's a lot of energy. And I'd be getting my nails done and it would be happening around me. And so now I just see spirit in my inner vision when I give spiritual readings.
Mm-hmm.
But I see, feel, and hear. I can also smell things or taste things. They also come very close and give me physical sensations in my body as to what happened to them before they passed. So it's very, very evidential. But when God opened me up, it was very much to get on this path. And I held back a couple years.
Did you?
I held back about 3 years.
Okay.
I only did it privately through word of mouth because I had a recruiting business. I was a recruiter for 18 years, and I had an executive coaching business, and things were booming in my business. And I kept feeling, what are people going to think? What's happening? I really found out about what this was, the spiritual gift that it was, about 10 months later. I really didn't realize that I was having a spiritual awakening. I thought it was just my loved ones coming to heal my heart, which is what it is as well, heal my grief. But I really didn't realize until I met a man by the name of James Von Prague, who told me that I was a medium, and I didn't even know what medium meant or medium was at the time. And I just said, no, I'm not. I'm a coach. So I went through, it's amazing when you experience things like this, the teachers show up right away to help guide you and to help teach you. I had a number of spiritual guides show up during my spiritual awakening in my meditations, because after I experienced my grandmother and grandfather and my uncle, I was meditating every single day, and all my loved ones were coming to me, and I was crying and healing just on a daily basis. It was incredible. And I was receiving quite a bit of evidence too. Spirit was developing me. So my friend Heather and my grandparents, they were all developing me on a daily basis. And I would share things with my family, and they'd say, how do you know that? I said, well, Grandma told me. So I would they would tell me things that I wouldn't have known, growing. And so that's how it worked. And I was in meditation. I've been meditating for 11 years now, going on 12 years. And Spirit would take me through journeys in my meditations, where I'd be on a beach, or I'd be on the top of a mountain, or I'd be under this oak tree, and so I started to journey in meditation, which Yeah.
I'm curious because I've seen looking at your website and talking to you a little bit. You use language that makes me wonder about your religious background. You talk about
Yes.
spirit, you talk about God. So tell me more about your religious beliefs.
So I am Christian and Catholic. So I grew up Christian in the Bible Belt in Wheaton, Illinois, and I met Billy Graham. And I grew up going to private Christian schools, and so God was always a forefront in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and Jesus. And so I always knew my entire life that God was there, and I had a strong faith. And I had a very chaotic childhood. So my father was not in his truth, and he was just not honest. And he did take money from people. He was a bit of a con man. And he was wanted by the FBI by the time I was 16, 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in that type of environment where I knew from a very young age that my father was not living his truth, not in his truth. And so I was always kind of tuning in because he was unpredictable in a way. And so, and here we are going to Christian schools and private schools, and my faith is very strong, but I'm definitely in an environment growing up that is not resembled of that faith. If that makes any sense. It was
Sure.
very
Yeah.
much like a dual type, not measuring up.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was going to school, I could feel that I was protected my entire life. So my father was abusive, and I just knew I was protected on some level. But as I grew up, we had to recite Bible verses in front of the class every week, and so I was very familiar with that too. And then before I married my husband, I became Catholic. My grandparents also became Catholic later in life, and I would go to this charismatic church in Michigan with my grandparents when I was like a tween, like a teeny bopper young. And I saw hands of healing there. I saw hands of healing. And it just felt very spiritual, very healing when I was there.
Yeah.
So after I had my awakening, I needed to understand this biblically. So I was guided to go under spiritual direction. So a spiritual director I had for about a year, who helped me understand that I was having spiritual experiences and I was experiencing spiritual gifts.
Okay.
And that's how I understood it, that I've been given a spiritual gift. And understanding that spirit is our birthright. We're spirit in the body first and foremost. That's biblical. And we all have this connection. We all have it. We're all mediums and channels and instruments of that presence within us. And so we all have this gift. And meditation is very much, and some of us are just really developed more so than others because of how we grew up, because of always tuning in, which is what I was doing my entire life, or just having these spiritual awakenings. You know, I signed up for this evidently. I was brought here to be a spiritual teacher and spiritual medium and mentor. Little did I know, because I knew nothing about this.
So the spiritual director you mentioned, was that in the Catholic Church?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was through San Franciscan ministries here in the Chicago area. And I would just meet with her weekly, I was having so many spiritual experiences around that time, synchronicities and signs. Everything was just coming in on a daily basis. And so sharing all of this. And then when the families came from St. Jude Hospital, I was still very much in the closet, if you will, for a couple of years. And when I read for the first child in spirit, around the day of her passing, it was a friend of mine's neighbor in another town. And this little girl came through for an hour and 8 minutes and blew everyone away. She was incredibly, I have chills all over. She was incredibly evidential. She mentioned her grandpa's name. She brought through a name of a little girl who was with her from St. Jude who passed 3 days before. She mentioned her name, Maya. She was just coming in with so much evidence. And that reading that I gave back in 2000, I think 13, changed my life. Yeah, she was 8 years old when she passed. And my son was 8 years old at the time. And I cried for days. I mean, she was around me. She orchestrated her family calling me. It wasn't a scheduled reading. They just called me at night. And she was around me the entire day. This little girl in spirit. My phone wasn't working all day long. And because she was so close, I did see her with my eyes open, the corner of my eye, I saw her. She said that you're going to talk to my mom tonight and you're going to talk to my family tonight. I was like, okay. And then they called me that night. So that changed my life. And that's when I said, okay, all right.
So I'm curious because, and I'm really glad that you were encouraged by the church because, frankly, that's a little bit surprising.
Yes.
I've known several mediums that call themselves Christian, and I get a lot of pushback from the church a lot of times, and from people that claim they represent the church. So, have you experienced that?
I haven't.
Great.
So I met with our priest at the time back in 2012 or 13, and I said, this is happening to me. And it was right after her reading, this little girl's reading.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you're experiencing holy experiences.
Awesome.
And he said that you're being called to be in these gifts. And that's when he recommended that I have a spiritual guide or director through San Francisco Ministries to explain this to me, to help me understand this. I needed to understand this biblically just because of my upbringing.
Sure.
And in reading the Gospels, the Gospel of John, anybody just needs to read the Gospel of John to understand that we are spirit, and we have this connection for healing and for love. And so we have light, we have spirit. It's called so many things, but we are this first and foremost. And so that's what I'm here to really teach, help people understand that this is biblical and it is accepted in the church. And it's all about the language. It's all about the language. So there's a Bible verse in Deuteronomy that talks about gypsies and mediums that do not follow God. Well, that is very general. And a medium is also called a channel, a prophet. I do receive divine intelligence. I do have divine spiritual guides. And so it is a spiritual gift. It's the gift of healing.
I completely agree with you. I think it is about the language, and people will use, I was talking with a San Francisco priest, I believe he is, but he actually escorts people in the other life that get kind of stuck in between, and he helps move them along.
Oh, yes.
And we were talking about this stuff, and I was like, well, basically, you're a medium. And he said, well, no, we can't use that word. I don't want to get in trouble because I still want to remain a priest. But it's also important. And I'm glad that you're doing this because for some of us, I grew up in the church as well. And a lot of people that grew up in the church, they're just not ready to throw everything out. And so when someone in church tells me you have to choose this or this, it's nice to know that what we're experiencing is biblical, that it doesn't go against what the Bible says.
Yes, I mean, these are the gifts of the Spirit. These are spiritual gifts. And, I really believe, God raises the veil. God raised the veil for me. I mean, that day, so I could see my grandparents and my uncle right there and hear from my grandmother, who I was very close to growing up and stayed with them many, many, many summers. So I needed that healing. And I really feel that we are put on this path at some point to experience the God within, really. This is spirit flowing through us. Spirit flows through me in spiritual readings, and they're orchestrating this. They are doing this. They are doing it. I mean, I say to everyone that Spirit orchestrates the time of your reading. They orchestrate them finding me. They orchestrate who's coming through and what they're bringing. So a lot of people feel that, oh, it's coming from you. No, it's not coming from me. It's coming from Spirit. Mm-hmm. I'm just open to see, feel, and hear. But everything that they're bringing, they are bringing to touch your heart, to awaken you. A spiritual opens you up more to feel their love and receive them. Sometimes it awakens them completely to actually have this themselves, which I wish for everyone. So, I mean, I do feel that there's so many books that are written about awakening, consciousness, Christ consciousness, right? The gifts of the Spirit. I mean, the indwelling, which is what it is, really. So when we awaken to our spirit within, we can receive. And when I had my awakening, I kept seeing my 3-year-old self in my mind's eye. When I experienced that in 2011, I kept seeing her. She'd appear in my dreams. She'd come to me. So I started feeling my true self at 3 years old. I started feeling my or higher self or come back to me. And I have a meditation on my album about that, about your inner child and connecting with your inner child, which is who you truly are. Mm-hmm. And so that also happened in my spiritual awakening. And it healed me too.
Yeah.
So after, all this pain and grief in my life, I return to who I truly am throughout that spiritual awakening time. And I felt myself more gentle, lighter, less anxious. I will say that the divine gives you energy, gives you healing energy. Mm-hmm. And I have experienced this in my work where I may not feel well, or I have laryngitis and I'm about to do a live event, and I go up there and I open up to spirit within my heart, and the laryngitis disappears. And then when I'm done with the event and I start grounding, the laryngitis comes back. Yeah. So it is amazing how we can receive what we need on this journey. And it doesn't matter what we're really experiencing. I've done events where, my dog just passed away. And so I'm just filled with grief. And I've been sad for 3 days crying. And then I go into spirit and all of that's gone as I'm reading. So I know that we can receive beautiful, healing, divine presence, energy for what's on our spiritual journey.
I know that you've read for quite a few parents because you're associated with Helping Parents Heal and St. Jude's. And what's it like to connect with a child for a parent? What does that feel like for you?
Well, I love children. So I've always had a beautiful connection to children my entire life. So just helping with my nieces and nephews and things like that growing up. So for me, I want them, the children in spirit, to come as close as they can to bring this healing and this love. So I feel I may open up a little deeper than usual. Mm-hmm. And with that, they really knock it out of the park for their families and let them know that they're very alive in spirit and they're very much with them and loving and guiding them on a daily basis. So I just feel like attracts like. So I learned this a while ago. Every spiritual medium is very unique. Mm-hmm. And it's because they are who they are. They're just uniquely threaded. I mean, for me, I love children. I love being around them. I love my nieces, and I have a son, and so I love being around them. And so, and even babies. So I'm just that person. And so I feel that also is part of it, because there's such a comfort level there with that connection. Mm-hmm. It's very aligned. And so also with me growing up, I grew up with a lot of music my entire life. And so I played guitar and I sang a little bit. My dad was an Elvis impersonator singer. So, I grew up with that my whole life, which is why I have a strong connection to rock and roll heaven, because music was playing in my home every day. Mm-hmm. And my dad would sing on the weekends in the house. And so it was just part of my life growing up. And so I'm very attuned and aligned with people who are singers, songwriters, musicians in spirit as well. It's a very strong connection. And that's why I feel too. I can feel when it's really incredibly strong when I'm giving a spiritual reading. And sometimes it's not as strong. That's just how it works. That's right. Just, yeah.
Well, I'm curious about parents, though, in particular, because, excuse me, I assume that most people come to you in some sort of grief. That's why they're coming. That people want to connect to a certain person. But when it's a parent and a child, there's a lot of times there's feelings of guilt with the parent. Mm-hmm. Is this my fault? The child's life, we feel like the child's life might have been cut short. So what generally speaking kind of messages do you get to help the parents heal?
So forgiveness sometimes is one of them that comes through. And explanation, especially children who pass by suicide, really explaining what they were going through and what was happening with them with mental health, and or any family members too. It's not, a lot of people feel that they could have done something. They could have picked up that phone. They could have been over there. They could have done something. And when, I'll just speak in terms of the children, when they come through on this feeling of that they had gotten to this point within their being that was so low, very, very, very low, in a way of like a depressed state, where they just went through the motions and weren't even thinking about it. That makes any sense. So it brings through healing, and they don't want them. Another thing that happens is that when they come through around how they passed and how they took their lives, it's also, they don't want them to focus on that anymore. They want them to focus on the happy things that happen in their life and how they live their life. They want them to focus on that and how they help them, how the parent helped them throughout their life. And they're coming through to thank them for that too. and that this bond is still there, that this spiritual connection, that this love, it's the love that really is the strongest part of the connection, the spiritual connection and spiritual development that happens. It's the love.
Yeah.
And want them to feel their love, and they want to make them smile again too, like when they come through and they bring through memories or something that they just did right before this reading that I was with you, and they bring that through, and so they want to connect with them in a renewed place so they can feel their love and they could love them, and then they can love them. So they want that love exchange. And they also want them to talk to them and to be in a place of knowing that they're still with them spiritually, even though they may not see them, but feel them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I had my reading with you, and you didn't know who I was. All you had was my first name. I didn't know who I was going to be having the reading with, so it was a blind reading.
Right, Brent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got all that from. I felt like Shayna was there. I felt like she cared about me. She was still, the relationship and everything. And it was incredible because you talked about the work that I do and the work I would be doing, and you had no idea who I was or what I do. But you said something. This is why I want to share this story with people, because this is really
She
wild.
said,
I'm
so I
sorry.
said, so I said that she said,
She said, yeah, she said, but
yeah.
yeah, she talked about me getting on a plane and going to a conference and speaking, I think behind a podium and everything. And at this point, I had never done any of that. This was in April of 2021. And then last year in August, after you and I met at the Helping Parents Heal conference, bunch of synchronicities. I can't go into all of them, but Suzanne Giesman was involved in it, and the synchronicity and everything. But I was on the plane coming back, and I usually listen to music, and my music wasn't working, and I downloaded a bunch of movies, and they weren't working. So I said, I'm just going to go listen to a medium reading that I had, which I never do. And I had your recording with me, and I listened to it, and that came back. And I heard you say you're going to be on a plane, you're going to be flying, and it was like this was a year
I
and a half
felt,
later, and I just happened to listen on that particular day. As I was flying back. Otherwise, it really wouldn't even occurred to me. So I love sharing that story, because people will say sometimes, well, mediums will say things that are really general, they're very vague, they love you. Well, you gave me some very specific information at the time. You talked about shots, and I've been giving Shane the shots for arthritis. So you gave me some very specific information at the time, but there's no way you could have known a year and a half later I was going to be having this experience.
right. Well, she knew. So they're in the all knowingness in the afterlife. So they know past, present, and future what's going to be happening. And so what she was doing was setting you up in a synchronistic event, which they can do,
Mm-hmm.
to experience her fullness, her essence, her love, a gotcha moment, which they do. They will set you up in this gotcha moment. So, which is very much more of an awakening when you experience that synchronistic event with your loved one in spirit. You're having more of this awakening with them, of knowing that, wow, it's just the feeling. I call it the spiritual vortex. The feelings that you experience when you're in a synchronistic event with them in spirit, it is amazing. It very much is. And she set you up for that.
Yeah, yeah. As I said, it was at the time, when you did the reading, I was like, this is really great and everything. But I again, I'm a very rational person. I'm an engineer. I'm still trying to understand this whole time, no time thing, and what spirit knows about the future. But like I said, on that particular day, it was crazy, because also I'll tell this a little bit more of the story, because that whole experience being at the conference, 900 parents who had lost children, there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on that whole week with everybody. And Suzanne Giesman in the closing talked about this whole story about a butterfly, and it involved a butterfly and finding a clip and everything. Well, as I was on the plane, right before I listened to your reading, my alarm goes off on my Ring door monitor that there's a motion detector at your front door, and there was a butterfly flying around my camera, which set off the camera, and that had never happened before or since. And then I
Wow.
got that experience with you, so it was one of those really crazy days that I'll never forget.
Right. And didn't she bring through, because it's interesting, before I mean, before coming on, I have a butterfly on my desk from uh, from a daughter that I read for, and so I have this butterfly here,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I started getting chills when I looked at the butterfly just before I signed on. So I feel that the butterfly, she must have brought you the butterfly in the reading for you to experience that, because they can bring such intricate details
Hmm.
in a spiritual reading to set you up. And I always say, stay open, because whatever's coming in, if it seems random, it's not going to be random for you.
Right. Right. And then that's why I want to, that's a great point, because when you're getting a reading from mediums, sometimes people will say yes, no, or this doesn't make any sense to me. And I've heard a lot of mediums say, well, just set that aside for later. And then it's usually within a few weeks, but in this case, it was over a year. And then for the event to happen, that triggered me to listen to it while I was on the plane, because that was totally crazy too. Because there's an electronic glitch with my I couldn't get to the internet. Um, I want to ask you about, you talked about rock and roll heaven. I know you've connected with some famous people in the afterlife. Do you think you have a unique ability to do that, or why do you think you've had those types of connections?
Well, I feel it was just orchestrated that way. When I had my spiritual awakening, the first entertainer that came through was Jeff Healey, and he kept playing the song when I was sleeping. And I didn't know him that much
Hmm.
here.
I love
I
Jeff
grew up in
Healey.
the 80s. I grew up in
Yeah.
the 80s. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, love music. And so he came first. And then the next day I get in my car and he'd just come to me in my dream state singing the song. And I turn on my car, and at the turn key, that song is playing.
Mm.
So he set me up with the synchronistic event and validation that yes, it was me. And Spirit does this all the time.
Mm.
So then I started getting more entertainers. Davy Jones. I grew up with the Monkees. After school, watching them, he woke me up with the song, and I could hear his voice, and it was very, very, very strong.
Hmm.
So they just started coming to me. My grandmother brought me Whitney Houston in meditation. My father brought me Elvis in meditation. My father's in spirit. And so it was really, I'll say Whitney, that was the first entertainer that, I mean, came to me for months and months and months and months until she asked me to make a call and gave me a specific name of someone that she wanted me to call
Mm.
and leave a message for. Well, when I called her, that specific someone at this company answered the phone. And I said to her, I don't know how to tell you this, but Whitney's been coming to me and I'm spiritually gifted. And she said this and this and this and this. And this woman goes, oh my God. So she worked with Whitney. She goes, I came into the office and out of nowhere was her international tour fan, a giveaway right on my seat. No one knows where it came from 1991. And so Whitney was setting her up for a spiritual experience,
Mm-hmm.
setting me up for a spiritual experience because she answered the phone. And then it happened to be an assistant to someone who worked with Whitney in her career.
Mm.
Whitney wanted to give that person a very strong message.
Mm.
So she orchestrated that whole thing. She'd been coming to me for months and months and months, playing her music everywhere, in my sleep, waking up, in meditation. There's one day I went into 3 stores in Florida, and her music was on in every single store.
Mm.
And so I didn't know she had a connection to Dunkin' Donuts, but I was driving to Michigan one day and she was coming to me, and I pulled over to get a coffee, and I walked into Dunkin' Donuts and her music was playing at Dunkin' Donuts.
Wow.
So she continued to set me up with these synchronicities, signs, and validations for me to connect with her loved one here. And I gave them a reading from her.
Okay. Wow.
And Prince did the same thing.
So specific, they come to you with specific messages for people typically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're also coming through to also develop spiritually, because they have to learn how to connect when they get into the afterlife in the heavens. They have to learn how to come really close into someone's aura to give these very evidential specific messages.
Okay.
They really have to blend with the spiritual medium, I feel, in my experience. And so they were developing too. I mean, one thing that Prince said when he came to me, was my kitchen downstairs on the day of his passing. He said to me, "I hear you're a master, and I want to learn. I want to learn." I mean, he did say that to me. And I went to meditation, and there he was in meditation on this balcony with this purple galaxy around him, and Whitney was with him. And so it just started. He started coming to me on a regular basis. I always tell this too. He was incredible about bringing the signs. Incredible. Everywhere I went, there was Prince on a menu, my nail polish. I was in jury duty, and I got out of jury duty and I was walking down the sidewalk. I'm like, who helped me here? And then all the sunlight came down, and in the sidewalk, someone wrote Prince right in the sidewalk. So it's like they were showing me that we're here to stay. We want your help. We need your help. And I always say, I give it back to spirit. And I say, you've got to do the work. I will show up. I will show up and give the spiritual reading, but you have to do the work. So that was early on. Well, 2016, 14, 16. But then when I started doing a lot of events, the entertainers would come through for someone in the audience at the live event. So that started happening too in the last 5 years. So you had asked if it's unique. My father was an entertainer. He's in spirit. So I really feel that, and he was connected to some people in Hollywood as well. So I feel that that connection is just so natural.
Right.
It's just something that's just natural for me. I mean, growing up. And then Elvis. I mean, when Elvis came, that was an incredible part of my journey because he also connected me. So, and it was just very natural.
Yeah.
I grew up with Elvis my entire life. So.
Well, it makes sense. You have that affinity. You have that connection to the musician's soul and loving music. So it makes sense that they would be able to blend with you maybe easier than someone that doesn't have that connection. And you said something really important there. I think about them having to learn to communicate, because sometimes people, when our loved ones pass, they're like, well, why don't I get the type of sign other people get? Why don't I get that connection? And I think sometimes it's the person on the other side has to learn to do these things.
They do have to learn. And I've had like loved ones coming through and saying, oh, I'm just learning this. I'm just learning how. And I would say, okay, step closer. I always tell them, come closer. It's okay. Come closer, blend with my aura, blend with me. It's okay. So, I mean, it's funny that the kids are so good at it. They're so good at just like blending, where people that are older just tend to stay like, here. And so I'm always helping loved ones in spirit to, connect and come closer, or to bring it differently. Like they don't understand that. Can you bring it differently? Just about a week or so ago, I was reading for this woman. She was from South Africa and in South Africa. And her loved ones were coming through, and it was like 2 or 3 at a time, and I was inviting just one at a time so the messages don't get like mumbled. Well, I said, I know your mom. I know she's trying to bring a name because I keep seeing, or I'm starting to hear the name, but I'm inviting her to come closer. And she had just passed, and she actually showed me something to say her name. And so they brought their names, and she showed like a mala, and I said mala, and she goes, that's her name. And so what I want to say about this is that they were involved in her spiritual awakening, because right after her spiritual reading, within 24 hours, 2 license plates showed up. with names.
Mm.
Her grandfather was named Aji. That was on a license plate. And so they brought that. And if the signs show up within a day, I always send them to the one that I read for, just
Right.
so people understand that their loved ones are doing this. They're opening you up more to feel their love
Right.
so you can heal and spiritually develop. And so I thought it was amazing. I thought it was just so amazing. That always amazes me when they bring the signs right away, right
Hmm.
after the spiritual reading. It's amazing. It's just that
Yeah.
I want you to understand that that did happen, and now this is happening, and it's validating that we
Right.
were there and with you, and we're still with you.
Yeah, that's the really cool thing is the validations, when you do get that, because we tend to talk ourselves out of things a lot of times. People are like, well, maybe that
Yes.
wasn't really real, maybe that was a guess. But spirit, I found you're right. A lot of times it will back it up with validations that are pretty much undeniable if you keep your eyes open.
Yes, and I do say, you can receive signs every day. Just asking for a sign in your heart and feel love. It's all about the feeling. Spirit really responds to the feelings that you're holding within your spirit, within your heart. They respond to that. So I teach to hold a place of love in your heart and ask them to bring you a sign. They get to choose the sign. There's only like one time in my teachings, I was teaching, and this woman in my class shared that her mom passed of breast cancer, and they had found something in her mammogram. And she said to her mom in spirit, she said, Mom, if I'm meant to have surgery, I want you to bring a bird in my house the next day, so tomorrow.
Okay.
And if this bird shows up in my house, I will have the surgery. The next day, through her fireplace, a bird flew out into her house.
Oh, wow.
That is the only time, because I always say, don't choose the sign for spirit. Let spirit bring the sign that they want
Hmm.
bring you. So there's no block here, right?
Right. Right.
Just, and you just be an observation daily for it. Well, that was the only time that I heard something like that. But she was in high need. She was
Hmm.
in high need. Her mom passed of breast cancer. They found something. And so she needed to know without a shadow of a doubt what her next.
Can't deny that. But yeah, it's interesting because we do tend to say, okay, well, there's general rules, right? But then also spirit can do amazing things too when necessary. I think it was Suzanne Giesman that told a story. She was like asking for a sign once, and she asked for something crazy like a pink elephant. And then she was driving by, I think it was a car dealership, and she looked up and there was like a big pink elephant in the lot. So it's sometimes fun to maybe test it like that. I tend to be more like, I don't want to really ask for too much, or I don't want to ask for anything specific. But I get crazy signs, and a lot of times it'll be on special days. On my birthday this year, I got a sign from Shayna. So it's fine I like what you said about don't try to be too specific, but it's also pretty cool when spirit really surprises us too.
Yes, it's that part is amazing. And I'm pretty uplifted on a regular basis with signs from
Yeah,
my loved ones.
yeah,
I mean, I'm just like everybody else. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's from my grandma, or that's from my uncle, or it does blow me away. And I do feel just so much love and healing when it happens. It's almost like everything is planned,
mm,
everything is on your timeline, it's all planned. And one of the first, I'll say, divine messages that came in my spiritual awakening was it's in the wonder that the miraculous happens.
mm,
And that was given to me early on. And so every day I would just be in
mm,
wonder what spirit's going to bring.
mm, mm.
And I still am like that. Whenever I get a lot of signs in my car when I'm driving, a lot of them. And so I'm always in wonder when I get in my car, who's going to be connecting with me in spirit. And it happens every time I get in the car or every time I travel. We were just away a couple days ago, and I just went to Priscilla Presley's show. She was in town over a week or so ago, and I went out to see her show. And first restaurant we go in and sit down, there's a cardboard copy of Elvis, 6 feet tall, right in front of us, up on the wall as we're eating dinner. And then I walk into this art gallery, and All Shook Up is playing, and he plays that song for me all the time when he connects in meditation. That specific song is played. And then I go into this bookstore and I see this book in the spirituality section called Velvet Elvis. So 1, 2, 3 signs, just a validation of that connection. So it's not just our loved ones that can bring us these spiritual signs. It's who's on our spiritual dream team, I say, who's working with us
on
our destiny and our spiritual path forward. And so you can find that out if you hold this place of who's with me, who's working alongside me. We all have a spiritual dream team helping us on this path forward. And so I always ask, who's with me today? And then I see a sign.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So I want to ask you, obviously meditation you believe is important. It was important to your opening up, and you've released this album of meditation. So tell me about that and how it can help people.
So guided meditations to awaken to spirit are meditations that came in for me during my awakening, that I received in meditation. They were sort of downloaded. And so there are 6 meditations on the album, and then the song Amazing Grace, which my niece is a singer-songwriter out of Austin, Texas. And she sings on the album Amazing Grace. And it's a beautiful angelic version. And so they're all guided meditations. One's an angel meditation to meet your guardian angel. Another one is called Oneness, where you spiritually journey to sacred spaces to connect with your loved ones in spirit. What was amazing is that I taught this meditation workshop at the conference that we saw each other at last August. And parents came up and said that they experienced their child in spirit for the first time, which is what it's all about.
Right.
I say it's in the believing that we receive. So going into the meditation feeling peace and love, and being in a state of allowing yourself to experience this love and this healing, because it can be quite powerful. I mean, spirit, in a way, kind of waits for us to be in that meditative state, for them to connect with us. A lot of people experience their loved ones in spirit when they're on vacation, because if they're in a place of presence, they're in a place of letting go, of allowing, of feeling peace. And that's when their loved ones can come so close. When we're in this place of peace, love, and joy, those are the higher vibrations in the heavens and the afterlife. When we can get there, that's when they can get there with us. And that's where medium comes in. We're raising our vibrations, they're lowering theirs a little bit in order to connect and communicate. And that's what medium means. I asked one time in meditation, what does medium mean for me? What does that mean? That word, what kind of meaning does it mean for me? And I was shown me on this big white slate, me plus DIUM, and under D was a divine intelligence uplifting me.
Okay. Yeah.
It was shown in meditation. And so I feel that if we're doing our inner work to be in a place of peace, spirit is going to very much develop us on a daily basis. And I do feel centering, meditation, contemplation, and reflection just getting out of the brain and just dropping those 18 inches into the heart, the spiritual center, and being there a little bit every day is really going to help with the connection, with the spiritual connection, because it can happen like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
quickly. Yes.
Well, as you said, we all are spirit, but then we are also in the body. We've got the brain. We've got all
The
this stuff going
brain.
on. When you said people connect, you said on vacation. I thought you were going to say when we're sleeping, because a lot of times that in the dream state, which you said, it kind of sounds like
Yeah.
it started with you, and then that for me, it's that in between state. It's like that 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning when you're just starting to wake up. And I've heard a lot of different theories. It's about why it is in the middle of the night, but for a lot of us, it seems to be that middle of the night state.
Well, right after deep REM sleep, there is a meditative state
Hmm.
or wakefulness. And that is when spirit can connect mostly, is right in that meditative state. They can come in and they usually, show themselves very, very healthy. But there's so much more that you can experience when that happens by communicating yourself. I mean, it's all actually telepathic when they connect with you spiritually, that you can commune with them and communicate and ask questions and receive. And there's so much more. So I invite people, when you are experiencing spirit in your dream state, to just get close and communicate. And so much can be, I'll say, given in those spiritual experiences in the dream state. You can experience so much, like just that in between, when you're spiritually when your spirit is on like a journey there's so much you can experience. And there's no space and time in the afterlife. So it can feel like when you're experiencing that with your loved ones in spirit, it can feel like a whole night. And it's just that little place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that amazes me. That part of it, just for me, soul journeying and journeying in your spirit,
Hmm.
that part, there's so much more I want to learn and research about that. Some people call it, out of body
Hmm.
experiences, your soul's traveling or journeying. It's happened to me a lot. And sometimes I feel like I've been on vacation with a loved one.
Hmm.
Just in that short period of time, it feels like I've been gone for a while. And then I wake up and I can't move. So my
Yeah.
body is like completely numb.
Hmm.
And then it wakes up. So I don't know, I know people have experienced it. I experience it often.
Hmm.
There's so much more I want to learn. There's infinite, I think, wisdom around spirituality. And it's been written about, through the centuries. But there's so much I want to learn about that part.
Yeah, and I know people that do astral travel, out of body
Mhm.
travel, and I've heard it described kind of the way you're describing it. People, there's different feelings with their bodies when they come back in and stuff like that. So there's so much to learn, so much to experience, while we're here. And I'm glad that you're allowing people to understand this. So I know you have your meditation album, and I know you do medium readings. What other things do you offer?
So I do live events, and I think our next one is going to be in Detroit in the fall. We haven't gotten the date or venue yet, but Spirit's very strong with me up there. There's a lot happening, and they come in very quickly and strong, and they're very entertaining too for the audience. Just the love and the healing that comes through in live events is pretty amazing.
Mm,
And Spirit's very strong,
yeah.
extremely strong. Um, so I also teach online classes I have a 3-level program: awakening, aligned, and awakening, attuned, and aligned. And we're just finishing up with 2 of my groups. So we may be opening it up again in the fall. Okay. So my program is called Awakening. It's a 6-month program where you learn about the gift of spirit, spiritual signs, your spiritual guides, meditation, and then it goes on to attuned, where you attune more with spirit. And there's a lot of application. A lot of people that I worked with. I've been teaching online since 2016. A lot of people have gone on and developed as a spiritual medium and so forth, or as a channel. So those are the things. I also teach meditation workshops online and in person, and speak.
Awesome. Yeah. So let people know where they can find you.
So actually, first I want to talk about guided meditations to awaken to spirit. It's right here.
Yes, absolutely.
It is on Amazon and iTunes. It can be downloaded. There's a free meditation, Heart Opening, it's called, on the album. That's a free gift on my website. And you can go to, actually, I'll spell it out, TOUCHING, the number 1, M, hearts.com. So touching1M hearts.com. And I always tell this story, how this name came about. I was at a conference and I was in a business building workshop, and for your spiritual business. And for some reason, the teacher put me in the middle of the room and she said, everyone gather around so she could receive something around her business. And that's what came in, touching 1 million hearts. Mm-hmm. So spirit, it's spirit given.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes, but I always like to get it on the recording so people can actually hear it as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I love teaching meditation. I mean, I have a dream to have events where people have spiritual awakening. That's what happened to me. And I feel that is a dream of mine, to have big events with meditation for people to experience the love from spirit, the healing from spirit. Awesome. I've never shared that before. I think that's the first time I'm sharing that.
I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. Stacy, it's been a pleasure having you today. Thank you for sharing your experiences with your wisdom, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. It's great to connect with you. I see your beautiful daughter right behind you there. She is a shining light, shining light.
Yep, always with me. All right, enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Thank you, Brian.
Bye.